So the dust has settled from the May 2nd balance update, and here we are in a fashionably late patch review with a little bit of talking about Ecto Gambling as well at the end. But I really wanted to highlight this, even though this is a little bit later than I would have liked, on how remarkably well balanced the game actually is. And in fact, how the changes, although small, have actually made a pretty big difference, I would say, to both PvE and PvE in the way the game actually plays out. So first of all, let's talk about PvE real quick. So the big things that happened here was Condi Hollow is now really good, Reaper is now really good as well, and Firebrand got a little bit worse, while Dragon Hunter got a little bit better. And I think it's really interesting to look at the offensive supports right now. It turns out that they're all surprisingly really close together in terms of effectiveness, and actually all have their own special thing. Of course, Harbinger, this patch, actually got a huge buff and now performs really well, both as a damage build and actually as a quickness build too. I have to admit, I slightly underestimated this. I'm not really a huge Harbinger fan. That's probably why. But yeah, this build is really strong. And if we're looking at quickness builds right now, Herald is really good. Firebrand is really good. Scrapper is really good. Harbinger is pretty solid. And Chronomancer is good too. And you kind of see a bit of a similar story with Alacrity builds too. Renegade is now kind of on the up and up. Spectre is good. Alacrity Mechanist is good. Mirage, a little bit weird to play. It's slightly more inconvenient, but definitely still a solid build, particularly on those confusion fights where it can really excel. Like, there's a lot of builds that work out really well. Noticeably, we do actually see Untamed. I was really sad they actually went through the Untamed nerf, which significantly made that build. Oh no, it's so much less fun to play now, and honestly, it's going to need a little bit of a redesign, and that was kind of the point of this change. The Fervent Force nerf here, they've given up. They go like, well, you know, we're throwing our hands up in the air. We're just going to delete it for now, basically, and I'm actually expecting a big rework coming through on the June 27th patch. So Untamed mains, don't worry about it. And on the Alacrity side too, we see Willbender. Still hasn't really found its identity as that Alacrity support. I think they might try and position it as almost the Harbinger of Alacrity. Harbinger being very high DPS, big damage, while providing quickness. And we might see Willbender be a very high damage, kind of glass cannon Alacrity option as well. That might end up working out. There are a few playability issues there. It almost suffers the same as Mirage, right? Where you kind of have to be attacking something to generate Alacrity, which really isn't ideal. So we may even see some redesigns. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked there, because what I really wanted to talk about is how many options there are, even at high performance level. A really great example, actually, is I'm currently doing a bit of a speed run attempt. We're going for sub 2 hours for a full clear of raids with all challenge modes on. We're on about 2 hours and 7 minutes. Definitely tune in every Monday for our attempts there, by the way. You can watch us throw live on stream. It's going to be great. But I actually kind of looked at some of our runs, and I looked at the builds we were playing, and we actually play 5 different quickness builds. We actually play Herald, Firebrand, Scrapper, Chronomancer, and Harbinger on our setup. We actually play a lot of Alacrity builds too. We're playing a Renegade at some point. We're playing Mirage, obviously. We're playing Alacrity Mechanist. Of course, we have the Druid as well, really kind of being up there as the robust source. That's going on there. And in total, we end up using 2/3 of all of the elite specializations in the game. The point being that even, you know, when we're thinking about high performance, you might be thinking, oh, you're going to play the same comp on every single boss. No. In fact, even at a relatively high performance level, you can actually seriously get some incredible value out of a really wide range of these elite specializations in PvE. And I just wanted to kind of point out, this is pretty impressive, right? I know it's really easy, you know, grumbling about balance. That's a bit of a national pastime in any MMO, of course, or any competitive game, really, or any game that has balance in it. Everyone loves to complain. But I really do want to give a bit of credit to CMC here. There are certainly some issues that need to be resolved around playability and so on. Kind of sucks that DPS Firebrand kind of had to die for the sins of quickness Firebrand. But these are all things that can be addressed, and I'm really expecting some serious swings to be taken at the playability of particularly offensive support builds. coming up in that June patch, right? I think that seems to be where they're targeting, introducing the quickness Deadeye, right? The DPS Druid, the DPS Tempest, all that kind of fun stuff. Really, really good. And in terms of the damage variety here as well, almost every elite spec actually has a good damage build, and often more than one. You might have a Condi build and a power build at the same time. It really is. We're living in a remarkable time in terms of PvE balance. Like, I know I think I've said this before with some of the previous patches, but I'm continuously impressed by the direction that CMC is actually taken, and of course the skills team. We can't get all the CMC. Okay, he's going to get an ego on him, right? But I think we're really seeing some great changes overall. Hey, even Berserker does damage now. I think there are some design issues, and I'm really hoping these get addressed because, yeah, Berserker does do 40k DPS, but it's like another warrior DPS spec, and it's also one of the most unhinged classes to play in the entire game right now if you want to actually get some value out of it. So don't get me wrong. I think I really want to see some of these design things being targeted, some of these design issues actually being targeted. But other than that, things are really looking good for PvE, and I think there's a lot of variety that can come through. One sticking point for me, and this is still very noticeable, I think, is that healers are a little bit more spread out. I would say that damage builds and offensive support builds are really close, but it's those defensive support builds that are a little bit out of whack. I think the meta game, especially in pug groups, obviously, is ultra dominated by Druid, Mech, and Firebrand. This is particularly exacerbated because of how good Firebrand is in Fractals, which is obviously a really big priority for a lot of players. And of course, Firebrand got buffed. The rework to Firebrand, changing the pages to Initiative, made heal Firebrand in particular a lot stronger. And as a result of that, I do think that I really want to see some improvements to the playability of some of these other support builds to really kind of get some variety there, because ultimately the Guild Wars 2 meta is defined by supports first. Supports always define the Guild Wars 2 meta. So we really need to see some movement there, because then you have the counterpart. The offensive support will also get freed up a lot more, and you'll start to see a lot more diversity in that regard. But I think that's what the June patch is all about in that regard. So overall, I've got to say, PvE stuff is in a really, really, really good spot. If you like playing lots of different builds and you want to see loads of crazy stuff being played in, in raids and open world, right, any kind of group PvE, then there's never been a better time to actually do this. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to point that out. A little bit of a summary here, a bit of a review of the patch, what I think of it, like where things are going. And weirdly enough, I actually think about the same thing in PvP rather, actually. The Tempest change was the big thing here, and a few changes to Bladesworn and Warrior in general, actually, for PvP. But basically, Tempest got nerfed in PvP, so you don't have permanent Stoneheart now. You just have, it's 4 seconds when you attune to Earth, and 2 seconds when you leave Earth of critical hit immunity. But this actually really was not an over nerf, but definitely a solid nerf. Tempest was very dominant and a bit of a roadblock in the meta. Actually, it was a stone, right? It was a rock, right? That's what it was, right? And now that that's been toned down, Guardian, which was actually having a bit of a tough time, now Support Guard is seeing a bit more play. We're also even seeing Bladesworn creep back into the meta. And again, I'm looking at PvP, and this is so weird. I've been playing a bit of Ranked recently, and honestly, I'm kind of having fun, right? It's remarkable. Stuff is dying. It's not completely over the top like Catalyst when CMC first created that abomination into the game. It's not actually completely insane. Scrapper can be a bit of a meme sometimes, sometimes you get blown up out of stealth, right? You got to watch out for that. But overall, I think PvP is actually kind of fun right now. It's weird to me how good this is. I'm not used to this. I'm used to PvP being absolutely putrid, but I'm surprised actually with how good it's got. Like all of a sudden, these small tweaks and adjustments made by the skills team have really, really added up and made the difference here, I think. So I'm very impressed in that regard. And again, the same kind of applies here. Outside of very few specializations right now in PvP, everything is actually good. Like outside of, say, Firebrand and Scourge, that kind of trash, right? Everything's pretty good, right? In fact, weirdly enough, for the first time in history, Revenant is actually the profession that's kind of fallen behind a little bit right now. Herald has been good since the beginning of time, right? And of course, that has been Renegade and Vindicator and so on. Honestly, not so much right now, but every other profession has a lot of builds, and almost every elite spec is very playable incredible, at least in ranked. Obviously, when you get to tournament play, it's a bit more refined and the meta becomes a bit more strict. But for ranked, you could pretty much play anything and it will actually be pretty good and you can be effective on that, which I think is impressive. It's kind of snuck up on me, right? Because I haven't been playing that much PvP until relatively recently, actually. You know, what can I say, guys? I'm enjoying the meta right now. I'm playing some Condi Reaper. Absolutely disgustingly good build right now. Absolute annihilation. You just love to see it. You really do. Corrupting all those boons. Chill. It's a fun time. Okay, you guys have got to get in on the action. But yeah, it's very, very impressive to see where PvP it's kind of actually gone in this direction. We're really moving to where PvP can actually be a really good game mode. If only there were a few people who actually played it, am I right? And even for Herald, by the way, even Herald actually has a few builds kind of in the works. Looks like ArenaNet want to go in the Condi Herald direction. And to be honest, I think they could easily bring back Power Herald. Power Herald is one of those builds that just has this innate flexibility and usefulness to it. It's just a good PvP build, right, with what it can do and what it has the potential to. I don't think it would take that much to actually re-enable that build, the old favorite, and bring that back into that. So don't worry about it, Revs. CMC's probably got you covered at some point down the line there as well. And who knows, you know, maybe we can... I'm not sure if I want Renegade back, or Vindicator, actually. Those can maybe... They can stay away, but okay, we'll see about that down the line, actually. But yeah, anyway, like with those two game modes, I'm honestly... super happy about this, right? I'm actually super happy about this patch, and I think it had some really big effects. Hey, listen, you know what ArenaNet figured out with this patch? And look, honestly, I've got to give them credit for this, guys. You know, and I think you do too. ArenaNet figured out that if you just take a class that isn't doing very well, like Reaper and Dragon Hunter, and you just slap some numbers on it, everyone's really happy with you. Wow. Isn't that incredible? But yeah, it took us a while to learn that, but in the end, we got there. And that's, of course, exactly what they did with Reaper and a little bit with Dragon Hunter as well. Bringing back some of the classics from Heart of Thorns into the meta. We absolutely love to see that. It's fantastic stuff. You know, one thing, you know, I'm going to have to say this, otherwise the Thief mains are going to get me. Thief probably does need actually some significant changes of PvE, in my opinion. It's balanced too much around the stolen skills, specifically Daredevil, of course. Deadeye definitely has its place in some of this PvE content. A little bit niche, but it's definitely there. But Daredevil is it's a bit weird, right? Let's be honest, because that stolen skill is so impactful and has ultimately kind of held the class back. A bit like Epidemic with Necromancer, right? Like Epidemic was so dominant, so powerful that kind of had to be adjusted to give Necro some breathing room, and I feel that's similar with Thief. So look, there you go. There's your 5 minutes, or 30 seconds, Thief mains. Don't worry, I know about you. I'm listening. In that regard, when it comes to PvE. And one thing that I also really liked here, if we go to the next notes here, is that we actually did see ArenaNet actually kind of compensate Vindicator. And I think this is the kind of responsive balancing that I'm actually a huge fan of. The damage that was lost from this kind of weird bug on Vindicator that was massively increasing its damage, ArenaNet compensated for that and actually put this onto the dodge and also onto Nomad's advance. And that's a small thing to talk about, but I actually really want to highlight it because these are the type of things that really make a difference, right? I know that sounds like a small thing, but it's a big deal. When you see these little things, these little issues, and you go, okay, yeah, I'm going to target that. That is what takes the game from being good to great in terms of balance and in terms of playing your class. When you're playing Guild Wars 2 a lot, particularly if you main something or you really like a certain profession, the small things are the things that are annoying, right? That, oh, there's that bug. Oh, you know, I've got to do this. It's this aftercast canceling I've got to do to really get everything out of my profession, right? Those are the things that are really annoying. So kind of making sure that these extra little details get refined and actually get looked at, I think is a really, really kind of good sign, in fact, from ArenaNet in that regard. And, well, you know, I guess I better mention World vs. World a little bit. Of course, this wasn't really a patch that had much for World vs. World, to be honest, actually. Overall, it was mostly just like a slight buff to Druid, actually, to continue to, enable that Druid support role. And I don't really have much to say because nothing really changed, right? But I have got to say, World vs. World does feel fun right now. There you go. That's my review of the current patch in World vs. World. It's fun to play. I definitely recommend it. Get in there. Get your World vs. World weekly. and let's get rich together. Very nice. Oh yeah, they fixed some bugs too. Wow, you know, at last. This one in particular, the soul piece bug, when you get memed. They just need to make the spirits now do that, right? Spirits, they die whenever you go anywhere in PvE. If they can fix that, we're going to be having a really good time in that regard. Pretty good stuff overall, if you ask me. And yeah, and a little bit of a bonus thing here as well. Before we kind of wrap up, you know, a little bit of a mini review here. One thing that actually did get changed, and I thought I'd kind of comment on this because this is actually a surprisingly big deal. So the Ecto Gamble now has a daily limit of 20. And I thought I'd actually explain why this happened. I'm obviously not going to give details on this, and you'll see why. But a lot of people say, oh, this is because they want to cut down on gambling. And to be fair, it probably is. Part of it anyway. It is a bit weird that you can gamble in-game and lose all your gold, which is technically tied to real money in a sense, because you could buy gems. I'm not sure if people really do that, but it is a bit weird, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's a bit, ooh, okay. But the main reason for this, or I'm almost certain this was ArenaNet's main motivation, was because the Ecto Gamble was actually how a huge amount of duped gold actually got into the game. There was a very serious exploit using the Ecto Gamble, right, that essentially allowed players to generate way more gold, infinite gold, essentially. And I'm not going to give details on that, but this is actually confirmed. Funny enough, I've actually spoken to some players who did it, right? So that is confirmed, and I actually happen to know that they also got banned. So, hey, well done to ArenaNet there. You know, they didn't see that one coming. Well, they probably should have done, but they didn't. Quick clarification on the gold dupe. It has, of course, been fixed as of now. Otherwise, I obviously wouldn't even be bringing it up. The limit on the Ecto Gambling is to essentially prevent a similar situation from happening and being exploited if a similar exploit pops up in the future. So, hey, one, it's nice that ArenaNet is actually looking at this stuff because the economy obviously directly affects us as players, right? If everything becomes worthless because there's infinite gold, that's really bad, right? Because the Guild Wars 2 experience is very directly tied to the economy in that regard. So that's kind of cool stuff there as well. But it's, you know, that's almost certainly why that happened. And hey, we're also reducing the amount of gamba in Guild Wars 2 at the same time. But side effect here, and I actually think this needs to be addressed by ArenaNet soon. Like, big time. This needs to get addressed soon. And of course, the superior runes or supreme runes of holding, which are used for 32 slot bags or just any bags above 20 slots, they are only in the Ecto Gamble, which one is weird. And I think ArenaNet should maybe reconsider that design decision, to be frank. But secondly, because there are way less gamblers now, and people were kind of going crazy on this to generate those runes, the price of 32 slot bags has absolutely skyrocketed right now. They're up significantly. I think it's up over 100 gold per bag, the increase in the price there, which is definitely not what we want to see. So I actually think ArenaNet legitimately need to think about this. They need to go, okay, how are we going to add this? Are we going to add this to a drop rate to meta events or some other way to obtain them in some sense that kind of like still drains gold? Because again, let's kind of talk systems here. The reason the Ecto Gamble exists is because it's to get rid of gold, right? It's to say, okay, if you want this, you want, well, a little bit of fun, I guess, but also this merchant item that you can use. Also, the runes, you need to delete some gold. You're going to delete your gold and not give it to another player. Not trading it, you're throwing it into the void, which is actually a special thing. Because bear in mind, when you sell something on the trading post, that is still there. It does drain some gold because of the tax, but the item goes to someone else. Whereas with the Ecto Gamble, it's deleted from the game, which is actually very beneficial for the economy, right? You want stuff to go away in the game. So they need to find some other way to do this, in my opinion. Otherwise, that's simply, it's going to get worse, to be honest, and also very inconvenient for players who are looking to actually pick up that quality of life in that regard. So yeah. There you go. That's the news there. That's the Ecto Gamble. You know, that's the patch review. I have now reviewed the patch. Okay, just in time for the next one. So let's see how all of this how all of this ages. But I'm sure you'll have fun. But yeah, I'll just wrap things up right now. Actually, a little bit of a short bonus video for everyone. Okay, exclusive non-stream content. That's right. There's no Twitch chat over there. It's just you and me, YouTube. That's right. It's just us, and that is why. Let me know what you think. Am I completely wrong? Am I completely unhinged? I don't know. Okay, you tell me. Leave me a comment. And of course, like the video and subscribe for more content. It's mostly daily content here, right? So you might as well subscribe so you know when it happens every day. So you can come back and then watch and then leave more comments and then like more videos. That's what you got to do. And of course, Stay tuned on Twitch as well, streaming nearly every day. And I will see you then. Take it easy, my friends. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you next time.